So they called it Julian Pete. It was the scheme that put people on the street. When they sold stock, it went bust, bust, boom, bust, bust, boom, bust, bust, boom.
How long does it take you?
The best part is I'm sort of a savant at this. That just came right out of me. I know it sounds like it took about a month. You're
certainly an idiot.
You're one type of savant,
I
sure.
see you writing your whole thing. You research for 40 hours a day or whatever crazy stuff you do. You write frantically,
In a
almost
bathtub.
obsessively, compulsively. And then at the end of it, you're like, CC Julian. Da, da, and like you're sitting at a piano. No, it's not right.
Dun, 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 dun. And there's
No.
dynamite tied to one of the keys. And if I don't get a good parody in time, I blow up. All right, so super fans, unlike myself, might remember that Greg already covered this story in our Graveyards episode.
Slightly.
When you, like, I was like, I got the perfect one. It's Julian Pete. And then 2 days later, you reminded me that you kind of covered it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to focus more on this guy, CC Julian.
Yeah, because I covered his like sidekick. or
Yeah,
whatever.
I want to go a little deeper, the seedy details, but the man behind the Julian Pete scandal, Courtney Chauncey, call me CC Julian.
Please call me CC
Please
and don't
call
ask
me.
what the CC stands for because it's pretty lame.
Courtney Chauncey, meet me on the veranda.
Bring your finest frills.
Tea's ready. Courtney Chauncey.
Go fetch the queen. Don't catch influenza on your way over. So he was born in 1885 in Morris, Manitoba, Canada.
Oh, Canada.
Part of the Commonwealth. His parents were both from Ireland, and all that's known about them is that his dad's occupation was listed on the census as gentleman. Professional
Well, I'm a
gentleman.
nice guy. Well, so what do you do for a living? I know manners.
I'm an all-around good guy, and the government recognizes that.
Deputy gentleman.
I'm sheriff of all the nice guys around here. Growing up, he was very charismatic, but this was Canada, so the only jobs he could get were things like selling newspapers and Stanley Cups door to door. He was delivering milk and Stanley Cups. He was working in drug and clothing stores and Stanley Cup stores. Eventually, he moved to Regina, Saskatchewan. You're not a gentleman. You better not say something about that name.
Speaking of things that are not in Midnight Cowboy.
So that he moved there and he made a ton of money and then moved to Edmonton and lost a ton of money in something Stanley Cup related. In 1906, he moved to Vancouver where he heard about something called Texas tea that was gushing up in the Texas of California, Bakersfield. So he fulfilled every Canadian's dream and moved to Bakersfield to do backbreaking hard labor on an oil field, making $1.50 a day. But by 1909, he fulfilled every Bakersfield resident's dream of moving back to Vancouver to become a plumber and marry a woman.
Oh God! Everybody, that's the Bakersfield dream.
To be
Marry
a young,
woman.
to be a plumber and marry a woman. He dabbled a little bit selling jewelry and got into real estate again, where he once again made a bunch of money and then once again went bankrupt. So now it's 1918, and
Got a good habit of that.
yeah, it's now 1918. Influenza's going. He realizes he left his heart in Kern County, so he moves back to Bakersfield to work in the oil field again until he decides to prove his allegiance to America and enlist to fight in World War the First one. And when he got back, he decided to chase more oil jobs that sent him from Fullerton to Texas, and in 1921 finally to Los Angeles with a wife, 2 kids, and once again no money at all. But this was the time when oil was oozing out of Southern California, so he decided, I'm going to lease some land in Huntington Beach. There's some great protests going on there to start drilling, and he found absolutely nothing. But then he decided maybe actually drilling oil isn't the only way to make money in oil.
If I could make T-shirts that say oil on them.
If he could package a dry well just right, and if his hunch was correct that everyone in LA is an idiot, he could still clean up in this industry.
Right.
So what he did was he leased some more land, this time in Santa Fe Springs, and he set up about 12 wells. They eventually started producing a little bit, but that wasn't really the point anymore to call me CC. What he would do, he'd use his natural charisma and the power of advertising to get people to invest in his wells, and that would create the illusion. What the hell is going on?
I'm just trying to get comfortable because as you're talking, I'm like, this is going to be a long... As soon as you talk about oil, I'm like, oh boy, it's going to be the long con.
The long con is you having to listen to this. So he would get people to invest, and that would create the illusion of success.
Right.
And that would lead to more money, which is the basic premise of a Ponzi scheme. So the name of his new company for this would be the Julian Petroleum Corporation, or Julian Pete for short, which he started in June 1923. It's the boom, boom. Now he had to get the word out, so he took up permanent ad spaces in the Daily News and was in most other papers as well, where he made bold proclamations of how great his wells were doing and how great they always will be doing. He claimed he had the deepest oil well in Southern California.
Oh my God.
And
I got core. Earth core coming back up.
This one, I'm drilling oil from China. From China.
China.
And he swore that Julian Pete would one day take over Standard Oil as like the oil company. He even had some device rigged up to one of his wells. It would shoot fake oil out of it to show potential investors, like, look at how much oil's come in. It was just like black liquid was shooting out of
like
this
Hershey's
thing.
chocolate.
Pretty much. And it tastes good too. He pitched himself as the oil man of the people. He wasn't one of these Rockefeller, Doheny fat cats. He was just an oil man who was trying to help the people.
Just like Trump.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these Republican politicians. Right. I'm a fat cat for the people.
Don't mind my gold-plated outhouse, because that's all they had back then. He'd use a lot of slang and folksiness in his ads to show just how connected he was to the common man. He'd say things like, thanks, folks.
Oh my God.
You're a wonderful bunch of sports. And he used the word ballyhoo a lot.
I like that.
Like a lot of quotes, he always using ballyhoo.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good cover for lying to people.
Yeah.
It's just throw in ballyhoo.
It's a bunch of ballyhoo.
Ballyhoo.
Which is soprano for Sunday dinner. Get the gravy. He set up lavish offices in the Pershing Square building at 448 South Hill to make a visual impression on people. And he told people that if they ever betrayed him, they should walk right in there and shoot him dead. He said, let the buzzards pick my bones and the wind whistle star-spangled banner through my ribs.
What a con.
I'm so American, even my corpse pledges allegiance. Even my corpse is buying bail bonds, war bonds.
When I die, you'll see that I have an American eagle living in my rib cage. It'll burst out.
I have red, white, and blue blood cells. He wanted to show people he was serious and his business was legitimate. One ad said, widows and orphans, this is no investment for you. My appeal is addressed to people who can legitimately afford to take a chance.
He has the same principles of a sinking ship. No, wait, maybe not.
Widows and no, the opposite principles.
Yeah,
widows and
right.
orphans last.
Yeah, you're right.
Let all the rich guys out first.
Yeah,
leave their wives so that they can have an affair with their gamar. And his hunch was right. People in LA are idiots. He got over 175,000 investors within days.
Wow.
And 56 days in, he had sold $5 million in Julian Pete stock on a well that was not producing much.
That's stupid. That's stupid on everyone. That's smart of Julian.
Con man. It wasn't not producing oil. There was some oil. He was even able to open up several offices and 35 service stations, but his wells weren't doing as
good
as good or well as he was claiming.
They weren't doing as oil as the other ones.
They weren't doing as homonym as they were doing. But that didn't matter to Cece because now he had a ton of money and he was hell-bent on spending it the only way he knew how, lavishly. He called on Paris Hilton. They went out.
He called on Conrad Hilton.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. He seems to have had 6 houses, including one that had, here we go, a heart-shaped pool and a bathtub lined with 14-karat gold. Again, a tale as old as time. He would walk around wearing spats. You know spats?
So describe it, because my guy wears spats too, and I wrote it and I didn't know.
They're like bibs for your shoes. You have your shoes on, and then you have like a white curtain almost that you clip over the shoes.
Yeah.
It's the sign of a well-to-do man.
I see.
Or a made man. He'd constantly be at clubs and restaurants with women that weren't his wife. One time he left a taxi driver a $1,500 tip, and he bought a hostess at a restaurant a Cadillac to try to seduce her. But as it turned out, not all was oil. Homonym. Puffing up about how well your oil field is doing is one kind of con. Selling stock in your oil field when you aren't authorized to sell stock is another, and Julian Pete wasn't authorized to be selling any stock. CC, he never got a license to be doing that, and in 1924 he started coming under suspicion, and that led to investigation, and that led to being arrested for fraud.
That'll happen when you are lying.
When you're a criminal.
He got out buying Cadillacs for hostesses so they could sleep with you.
He got out on bail, and the company was still intact, but it turned out he also owed $792,000 in unpaid taxes.
Yep.
So now his reputation was ruined. Newspapers refused to run his ads, so to defend his image, he printed his own magazine called Truth. Telling people, I'm not that bad.
Don't listen to what the fake news media.
The made-up news, as they called it back then. As my friend, what's Donald Trump's dad's name? Buttface president dad? I don't know. He also bought the KMTR radio station to broadcast to people just how innocent he was, which is definitely a move a non-innocent person makes.
Yeah.
But a lot of times he went on the radio to speak. Protesters would cut into his frequency and start yelling over him whenever he would try to talk.
Pretty good move.
Yeah. People weren't happy with him because he already lost a lot of people a lot of money. One night at Cafe Petrushka. He got punched to the ground by one angry customer of his, Charlie Chaplin.
You're kidding. What an idiot Charlie Chaplin is.
Yeah, yeah, he's the idiot. I don't know who went up to who exactly, but from what I understand, Charlie Chaplin was sitting down, CC Julian was standing up, and he got mad at him, and he punched CC Julian while sitting down, and then stood up and punched him again and knocked him to the ground.
Good bit.
Yeah.
Good bit.
And then he slipped on his blood. One night, he got a phone call from a stranger telling him that this was his last night on Earth, and the next night, his house got shot up while he was at home with Jules Roth, his VP, and the guy who would go on to con Hollywood forever.
Yeah.
So that's where
certainly would.
Yeah. CC had to get his company back on track, but the only way the government would allow him to sell stock again for the company would be if CC resigned. In late 1924, he sold the company to S.C. Lewis, author of The Wardrobe, the Witch, and the Lion, for $500,000, who was an oil man from Texas who merged Julian Pete with his own company.
C.S. Lewis was?
S.C. Lewis, yeah.
Oh.
Not the author C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
This is the guy whose name is S.C. Lewis.
Got it.
Hence the joke.
I get the joke, Bill.
You're leaning over the bed of your car like we're in Home Improvement.
I'm so uncomfortable now. Everything's so metal.
That is so metal.
So metal.
They announced the merger of these two companies at a special conference at the Hollywood Bowl in January 1925.
What? Gather, everyone. These two companies are going to merge.
Pretty much. When you're oil, you can do anything.
I guess you're right.
And by April, CC was no longer part of the company. We'll get back to CC, but first, just a real quick, like 4 pages about how Pete ended. So we have to cover what SC did with the company, with the oil company. He had a huge task ahead of him of trying to save the tarnished name of Julian Pete. So he tried for a reboot. He got new offices in the Pacific Southwest building. He introduced lightning gas, which he claimed made cars go faster on less gas.
Okay.
It didn't. The problem was, now with more coal, the problem was SC was an even better con artist than CC was.
Whoa.
Yeah. So he saw what CC did, and he knew he could take it to a level higher than CC could even have imagined. SC was already being indicted in Texas for stock manipulation, but how would news of that ever reach Los Angeles?
Yeah.
SC was going to take that Ponzi scheme and make it live inside of a pyramid scheme. Pharaoh Ponzi is being buried inside his pyramid.
So like dirty, rotten scoundrel move to the only person to beat a con man is a better con man.
The only one who can fix this company is two con men. The first con that he was going to do was that they would have a small group of wealthy investors that were in on the con buy a bunch of stock to make it seem like the company was doing really well to artificially raise the price of the stock. This group was called the $1 Million Pool, and it was organized by Motley H. Flint, who you talked about a little bit, who was a very influential LA guy through land and railroad. At one point, he was the LA postmaster and started the bank that eventually became First National Bank.
Wow.
He referred to himself as a Santa Claus to Los Angeles. His younger brother was a U.S. Senator Frank Putnam Flint, who is the man that Flint Ridge is named after, but I guess also Motley by default because they're both Flint. Yeah. Motley was also very influential in Hollywood. He had helped start Warner Brothers, no relation to
Warner
Center.
Yeah. Or Jack Warner or Harry Warner.
So he had a lot of connections which let him bring into the $1 Million Pool people like Louis B. Meyer and Cecil B. DeMille and other people with B as their middle initial.
Sonny B. Good.
So all these rich people bought a ton of stock, so now the stock prices went up, and the regular people would then start buying stock, and that money was kicked back to the $1 Million boys, who were getting 100% returns on their investment per month, because they were just taking money that the smaller people were putting in. Yeah. But here was the second con they were running. They were authorized to sell 159,000 shares of Julian Pete stock. They sold somewhere between 4 to 5 million shares of it. But of course, this couldn't last.
Yeah.
In May 1927, the authorities started investigating the company, and that's when all the big boys cashed out. And within the week, the LA Stock Exchange revoked their stock permit. So they cashed out right before this crash.
Oh boy.
So the rich people cashed out rich, but now the con was over, and some 50,000 people had just lost over $150 million. People were furious with Julian Pete for the second time. Bob Schuller, raging Bob Schuller, was raging against them on his radio show every single day, but people's lives were ruined. Life savings were gone. A lot of people killed themselves, several of them on the suicide bridge. One lady shot her daughter and then went in the garage and gassed herself to death. The people in charge had to answer for this, but the legal part of the story is almost more dramatic than the actual con was. You touched on part of this. 41 people were charged in this crime. CC Julian was not one of them because they couldn't connect into any part of this because the case was such a disaster. First off, they couldn't really find a jury that fully understood the workings of the con. On top of that, the DA of of the case, Asa Keys, turned out to have been bribed by the defendants in the form of money, 2 cars, golf clubs, a watch, and a chaise lounge. On top of that, he was also helped to be elected DA by C.C. Julian in the first place. So he ended up going to trial himself after this and got 18 months in San Quentin. Then it turned out some of the jurors had been bribed as well. Then, to top it all off, Motley Flint was on trial for a different crime between his old bank and David O. Selznick.
This is straight out of Daredevil.
You've been reading way too many Fantastic Four. It's more like The Sopranos.
Yeah, I want to say it's more like the trial of Reed Richards. Go ahead.
On top of that, this is what you talked about. During that trial, the Motley Flint trial, a real estate agent from Inglewood named Frank D. Keaton, who had lost all of his money in Julian Pete and had slowly been going insane over this and had tried to kill his own family multiple times. He got up during the trial, yelled, "This fellow ruined me," shot him 3 times in the neck, Flint, and threw the gun on him, which is what you do when you whack somebody. And then you just walk out of there as if nobody's going to recognize you, which makes no sense to me. In Keaton's pocket was a pamphlet written by Bob Schuler called Julian Thieves. He surrendered himself immediately, but now Flint was dead. So since every single rule was broken during this court case, not one of the 41 people accused was ever convicted, and one of them got murdered. So they all got off. This was the longest court case in U.S. history, and it made one senator say it was emphatic evidence that you cannot convict $1 million in the United States. If you're rich, we've seen this time and time again, you're not going anywhere. This was almost as big a scandal as in the 20s as the Teapot Dome scandal, and some see it as the reason they formed the Securities and Exchange Commission. This led to the collapse of the First National Bank, most of which were taken over by Bank of America, and let them rise to power. And some people speculate that the events that transpired led to John Porter, the KKK mayor, being elected, C.C. Young losing the election for governor, and to Charlie Crawford's murder.
Wow.
This all, like, the repercussions.
Thing.
The way the company collapsed also foreshadowed the way the entire New York Stock Exchange would collapse in 1929. 2 of the higher-ups in the scam got 7 years in prison for a different con later, but everybody else was fine. C.C. Julian himself, meanwhile, after getting away mostly clean from all this, he tried his hand in lead mining in Leadfield, California, which is near Death Valley. He started telling people around that there was going to be a worldwide lead shortage. So they should invest in his mine now, but the government caught wind of this, and he got dragged through the mud by them in the LA Times, so he fled to Oklahoma City, where he tried again to start an oil company and was set to defraud people of $3.5 million before he was caught, but he got out on $25,000 in bail in 1933, and he fled immediately to Seattle, where he got on a boat to Shanghai and pretended to have an Irish accent on board so that the cops wouldn't find him. So now he's in China, and he's going by the name Theodore Roosevelt King, and immediately started trying to hatch schemes to con Chinese people. Now, he tried selling people cures for asthma and tuberculosis that he said he got from an old miner in the United States. He even got a doctor to do trials of his cure, but when he saw the dying tuberculosis patients that they gave permission to be tested on, he said, "Nothing on earth can save that man. Why don't you give my stuff a fair chance with someone who might live?"
Wow.
But then he gave in, and he told the doctor, "Go ahead then, Sawbones, but the subject is practically dead now." The guy took the drugs and died a week later. He also tried starting a coffin business, but got into a royal battle with his partner before the business even opened.
He's certainly moving in a direction of, like, working with sick people. Okay, now I'm working in coffins.
Maybe I can work in a graveyard. Maybe I can work in heaven. So that failed. Everything was failing, and he was just going around drinking and getting into fights in bars and borrowing money and never paying it back, scamming people out of more money. He had a really bad reputation really quickly in Shanghai, and people started to get wise, and they soon figured out who he really was. But when U.S. authorities tried to extradite him, they couldn't because he had a Canadian passport, and China wouldn't allow it. He said, "You can tell the U.S. to go to hell. They can't touch me."
Hell yeah. Get him.
He was just hopping from hotel to hotel. He was being kicked out for not paying the bill and drinking all the money that he did have. He also got really violent. One time he got lured to some place and was told he had to pay them money to get out, but he talked his way into convincing the guy to go into business with him and to come back to his hotel room, and he could get the money there. They went to the hotel room. Then CC beat the man and threw him out of the hotel.
Oh my God.
Another time he was driving through the countryside with some friends, and the car got surrounded by robbers, and CC punched the driver in the face and took the wheel and plowed through all of the robbers. He was also writing a memoir called What Price Fugitive, and was planning to buy a South African passport to move there to make some money, where certainly there's no bad things going on in South Africa. He believed a man wasn't beaten until he thought he was, but eventually he thought he was. One night he invited a friend to his hotel, where he, of course, conned the room service kid to give him a free drink, telling him, "I'll pay you double for it tomorrow when I have the money." And then he told his friend, I've had it all. I've had big successes several times over. I've fought every inch of the way and enjoyed every bit of it. There's nothing I've wanted that I have not had, so that anything I enjoy now will only be repetition of old experiences. I must die sometime. Life cannot bring me anything new. It sounds like his past was catching up to him and he was taking a lot of sleeping potions to get to bed. But one night in 1934, he took too many of them and he never woke up.
Wow.
He was $25,000 in debt when he died. 9 people who attended his funeral, they had to take up charity to raise the $46 to bury him. Even in death, he was making other people pay for his expenses. That's Julian Pete.
What a scumbag.
C.C. Julian of the Julian Pete scandal.